Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated in honor of Rabbi Farhi and Rabbi Mizrahi for all the Torah they have taught us and the world, sponsored by the Lowe family. As well, dedicated in loving memory of Mrs. Lily Safra, Leah Shalom Nishmat, Leah Bat Chana. Philanthropy has reached so many throughout the entire world. Also, dedicated in loving memory of Musa Nurani, Aleh Shalom, Lilu Nishmat Moshe Ben Yaakov Miriam, sponsored by the Musa Nurani family. And finally, and the dedicated and loving memory of Lou Jerome, Eliyahu Ben Esther, sponsored by his son Joey Jerome. And finally, the week of Kobru, sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do good today and every day. My friends, let us begin. Yesterday, we described and we explained one of the answers as to what the idea of the celebration on Sukkot is, according to the other opinion. The first opinion tells us that it's about the Ananei Kavod, the clouds of glory. The second opinion holds that God sat the Jewish people in huts, in tents, so to speak, in these shelters when they left Egypt. And the question was, why is that so special that it's worthy of celebration for forevermore? The answer that we gave yesterday is based on the idea of the Ramban, that once a person experiences great miracles, then they're able to see that God and His intervention is present, even in areas where you could not have imagined that a person could have been saved, could have been received salvation. And therefore, even on something which is perhaps seemingly more natural and more obvious, they begin to see that that too is the hand of God. And that maybe was the understanding of the opinion of Rabbi Akiva versus Rabbi Eliezer, that it wasn't only about the Ananei Kavod, it was also about, it was also prevalent, the idea in the huts themselves. Now, I want to perhaps take a look at a second element, the second idea that's present over here as well. The prevailing opinion is that the Sukkah represents the Ananei Kavod, the clouds of glory that God sent to protect the Jewish people in the desert during their time in the Midbar. And the rabbis explain, Baruch Atah, please do not answer Amen if you're listening to this recording. Baruch Atah Adonai. Elon melech haolam, she'akol niyad baro. Amen. So, according to this opinion, the holiday would be effectively in the merit of Aharon HaKohen. Why? Because we know that the Ananei Kavod, the Jewish people received the Ananei Kavod in the merit of Aharon HaKohen. It was his zechut that brought us this great miracle. The Be'er Miriam, the well that traveled with them to give them water throughout the time in the desert, was in the merit of Miriam. It's right there in the name. And the man was in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? What happens when Miriam dies? The Be'er, the well, goes away, and then the Jewish people don't have water, giving rise to the story of the stone where Moshe strikes the rock because they need to provide for water. They no longer have the traveling Be'er of Miriam traveling along with them. Okay? So the holiday of the Ananei Kavod, and thereby the holiday of Sukkot, is in effect a outcropping of Aharon HaKohen. The Maharal writes something, Rav Asher Weiss brings, that the Maharal says in Tiferet Yisrael something incredible. That if you look at the name of Aharon HaKohen, you'll notice at the beginning of Aharon's name starts with letter Aleph. But the remaining three letters of Aharon's name, Hey, Resh, and Nun, all represent the middle of the respective sets from within which they sit. So 5 in the category of ones, between 1 and 10, right? The middle number is 5. Resh, we have in the Hebrew alphabet, right? We have hundreds, okay? So you have Kuf, Resh, Shin, Taf, okay? So you have, what's it called? The 4 elements of hundreds. Resh sits in the middle, in between the 2 poles. And finally, the Nun also, in the column of tens, the Nun sits exactly in the middle, is 5 in the column of tens. Why? Because the nature, the power of Aharon HaKohen was to create unity by finding the common or the middle ground. That was Aharon's nature. So Aleph represents oneness, the fact that he could bring people together, and then the rest of Aharon's name illustrates how he was able to do that by finding the common ground between the two poles, between the two sides, between the two elements of Machloket. My friends, this idea also was the reason why Aharon HaKohen was gifted the great honor of being the Kohen Gadol, and not just being the Kohen Gadol in terms of being the larger Kohen from amongst the Kohanim of his generation, but rather that Aharon is the progenitor, is the source of all of Kehunah. So there is no Kehunah that comes from outside of Aharon. Why? Because the nature and the job of a Kohen is to bring peace between heaven and earth, between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. So this harmony that Aharon fought to be able to bring, the Shalom Bayit that Aharon fought to be able to bring, is represented by the coming together of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and God in the Sukkah. In the Sukkah, in the place where it is not so physical, it's not 100% physical, it's not 100% spiritual, it's a mixture of these two things. That's a place, if you will, a safe meeting space. Let's say you have two businesses and they're in a battle, locked in a battle over a difficult deal. Normally, they're not going to want to meet in business place number one. That's your home turf. You don't want to meet in this one, so where do they find? They find a neutral space, which is not mine and not yours. Sukkot doesn't take place in the Beit HaMikdash. It doesn't take place in the Beit HaKnesset. It doesn't take place in my house. So it's not, so to speak, in God's house, and it's not, so to speak, in our house. But we find a safe meeting space in between us and Him, and the desire to be there, to represent a leaving each of our own place, to arrive in each other's space, represents a willingness to be able to make up and to be able to reconcile in the most magnificent way. Therefore, says the Pasuk, a very strange language. Who sits in the Sukkah? Not Tzadikim, not Benonim, Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael. Every citizen of Israel. What a strange word. Where else do you find this concept? That all you need in order to get into the Sukkah is citizenship. Are you a card-carrying member of the Jewish people? Then the Sukkah already welcomes you in from between its walls. The answer is, when it is a desire to reconcile, where everyone is willing to step away from where they are into a neutral space, suddenly anything is possible. My friends, I want to share with you something that I think is very beautiful. The Vilna Gaon brings a very interesting idea as to why we celebrate Sukkot in this time. He says that most people ask that we first got Sukkot in a different time in the year. So, right, around Pesach time, right, when we got into the desert. So why in the world would we have this experience? Why would it happen later on in the month of Tishrei after Yom Kippur? And one of the answers that they bring, the Vilna Gaon says, is that after the sin of the Egel, there was a certain amount of time that the Ananei HaKavod left, they went away. And when did they come back? They came back in the beginning of the holiday of Sukkot, on the 15th day of the month of Tishrei. So at that point, the midpoint of the month of Tishrei, that's when the Ananei HaKavod came back, and therefore we celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. Now, the question is, why is it that we would celebrate the return of the Ananei HaKavod and not the first time that they appear? We should celebrate the fact that you got it, not the fact that you got it back. Let's say someone buys you a beautiful car, brand new Ferrari for your birthday. Hint, guys, my birthday's coming up. Okay? There's some sort of symmetry between Farhi, Ferrari. Either way, fine. Point is, at that point, I get the car. I park it like a dib right in front of the synagogue. And what do? They tow my car away. Every year, I send you a thank you note. On what day do I send you a thank you note? On the day that I got my Ferrari back from the impound lot. Why would I do that? You do it on the day of the gift. Got taken away, given back. Oh! So some people say, okay, they didn't appreciate it till it was gone. I don't buy that. You know, right? I don't buy it. You know why I don't buy it? Because when you didn't have it and you got it, that's when you appreciated it, because you didn't have it. You don't need to lose it again after having gotten it and then to, right? I don't buy that. Doesn't make sense to me. But I think there's a very deep concept. Sorry?
Maybe you was to have it.
So I didn't know what was to have it because I started traveling without it. Then I got it. So I appreciate it because I didn't have it. Now what happened? I lost it, I got it again. So now I appreciate it. Good, I appreciate it the same way the first time because I didn't have it. If I was born with it, I agree. I never knew what it was to not have it because I was born with the silver spoon. But they also did, there was a moment that they didn't have it and then they got it back. So the first time they got it was them getting it from not having it. And the answer is no, that's not the point. Them getting it in the first place was God giving them a gift. That's wonderful. In the ideal state, when someone gives you something, that's beautiful. But that is not a relationship. That is not the building of a house. That is not the building of a marriage. Do you know when a marriage is first a marriage? When it is tested. When something goes wrong and they find forgiveness. When there's acceptance of the person's flaws. In that first moment of acceptance, of rekindling, that's when they've shown their marriage. Because what is a marriage if not for the commitment to be there even when things are not clean, easy, and smooth? When two people are married together and everything is smooth the whole time, you do not know that they are committed to one another at all. You know why? Because it's not commitment, or it's perfect. How do you know that it's not about you enjoying this marriage because I get so much out of it? I'm not committed to the relationship. I just found something that really works for me. I'm committed to my wife. I'm also committed to my cleaning lady. You know why? She's awesome. She cleans up in the house. Everything's fantastic about the cleaning lady. I don't have to give up anything. Everything's perfect. Everything's amazing. Right? At what point do you know that a person is committed to a relationship? When something goes wrong and the person still shows up, that's the first time you saw that there was a relationship. So therefore, Ananei Kavod is when God exhibits to the Jewish people that even after the Egel, Amonai, I am God before the sin, and I'm still here after the sin. I'm still interested in reconciliation. I'm still interested in being here together with you. My friends, according to this, we start understanding what this means. The holiday is the holiday of Aaron HaKohen. Why? Because Aharon always was able to look and find a common ground. Hey, Resh, Nun. And create Aleph, create unity with that. My friends, this message is not only a lofty one with regards to God himself and the reconciliation and the finding of common space, but it's also true about any form of relationship that we have. It is almost impossible to enact, to endure, to create a relationship from the place from which we stand. It requires a movement, a departure from where we are. You want to go greet God? Take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. You're in the same place that you were before. It's true. But the fact that I left my place, even if I return to it later, creates and develops a sense of perspective on the place where I used to stand. I was able to see it from another place. Once we sit in the sukkah for a period of time, we can then revert back into our homes with the perspective of what it was like to go outside of that place and see it from another vantage point. According to this, my friends, the holiday of Sukkot is really a tremendous time. It carries within it an unbelievable power of shalom, of peace. And when there's a spiritual awakening from on high, an itaruta dile'ela, like the Zohar talks, when there's an awakening on high for a midah, it's not only true that that midah is present vis-a-vis us and God, it is also true that it creates a possibility for shalom between us and others. And why is that, my friends? The answer is because inside each and every human being is a spark of the divine. Their neshama, their soul, is a piece of God. Inside you is a piece of God. And therefore, the departure, the space that you've created or that you've allowed to seep in between you and someone that you really love, if something breaks down during the holiday of Sukkot, the time of Aharon, we have an ability to be able to rekindle and to reunite distant spirits and bring them back together. What's required? 2 conditions. 1, leave your space. That doesn't only mean the physical space that you occupy. It means the positions that you've taken. It means your absolute, non-negotiable red lines that you've decided is the space that you're not going to budge from even one drop. If Aharon was able, if God is able to leave his space to come down to spend time with someone whose only connection to Israel is that he's a citizen of Israel. He's not a practicer. He's not a person who lives it, who breathes it. He's an Arava. God finds a way of unifying even the Arava with the Etrog, with the greatest tzaddik. So too, that must be something we could do. So number one, a departure from your place. And the second thing, my friends, is recognizing that Aharon's name could have been Ar, An. If what the Maharal was trying to communicate to us was that Aharon created unity by finding middle ground, then all we needed was one of those letters. Why did we need all of them? So the answer might be that we're a little thick and we wouldn't have picked up on it unless it was the middle of the ones, the tens, and the hundreds. I think there's another concept. I think the idea of the Maharal is illustrating to us something fabulous. It's illustrating to you and to me that a lot of times a person feels, Rabbi, I already moved. Rabbi, I already made concessions. I'm already out of my comfort zone. Look, this was my concession. This was my compromise. Aharon taught that multiple compromises need to be made. And sometimes you're compromising top line, but you're not compromising bottom line or middle line. And what does that mean? A person might be giving up on something super important, but that only happens once a year. You know what it means to me, Rabbi, to spend the high holidays in Great Neck? You know what that means? I'm Syrian. What I need that for? I don't know any of their tunes, or vice versa. You know what it means for me not to be in the Moroccan minyan? Rabbi, I love the tunes. I have to come to this guy. He's Ashkenaz. I feel they're crying the whole time. Doesn't relate to me. Ashkenaz guy. This is how it works, right? Person thinks, you know what kind of compromises I make? It's true. It's true. But what about the compromises that are in the one column that happen every day? If you're a person where there's no compromise in conversation, there's no compromise in relationship on a natural level, it doesn't matter that you did this, big blowout compromise, that takes place once a year, super showy, in front of everybody. Don't you remember when I gave that speech? She's like, I remember. You know why I remember? It was at our 50-year wedding anniversary. That was the only time you made the speech. 50 years I waited for that speech. I left the marriage, honey, 25 years ago. You're 25 years too late. If you would have given it the silver anniversary, the nature, the fabric of our relationship would be very different. Aaron is communicating that there needs to be compromises in the one column all the time. A person needs to feel that my husband, that my wife, they came towards me in the one column. They came towards me in the 10, which is every once in a while, the things that come by here and there. And then in the big decisions, the life decisions, the hundreds column, if you will, also a person should find a way to make it clear to their wife, to their husband, to their children, that they're taking them into consideration. When I moved here, so I did my first interview, was a Shabbat in this Beit HaKnesset. The second time I came for another Shabbat, they asked me to come back. I said, I'm going to bring my wife and children. So I don't know how, as nicely as they could say it to me, they were like, Rabbi, you don't have to bring your wife and kids yet. You don't have the job. You don't have the job yet. You can bring your wife and kids later. And I said at the time to the Beit HaKnesset, I said, I'm coming and bringing my wife and children to see the Beit HaKnesset, to see the neighborhood, to see the people, and to visit the schools. If my children are not going to be comfortable in the schools that are here, I know it's not there. You haven't decided about me, but we also haven't decided about you. And if it doesn't work for my kids, it doesn't work for me. It could be the best opportunity of your life, but if it doesn't work for your kids, if they're not part of the decision-making process, even if every day You're compromising in the ones and in the tens. But on those massive life decisions, they feel like they weren't consulted, they weren't spoken to, they weren't part of, in any way, shape, or form, the decision. And the resentment that grows is unbelievable. My friends, I think that's why we go back to this concept that we started with. That's why there's another opinion in the Gemara. Other opinion in the Gemara says, one shita is that we're celebrating the fact that God gave the Jewish people ananei hakavod. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Ananei hakavod. There's clouds surrounding you wherever you go. By the way, even Qatar Airlines doesn't have travel on this level, where you're literally transported in clouds. Climate control. It says that their clothing did not wear out on them. It was always freshly laundered clothing that was accompanying them wherever they went. Their shoes did not wear out all the time they were in the desert, because they were walking on clouds. I have a pair of sneakers made by Clark's. They're called Cloud Steppers. I call them Ananei HaKavod sneakers. All right? Cloud Steppers. This is their life. Unbelievable. On the one level, we celebrate Sukkot, right? Because God gave us the Ananei HaKavod. On the other level, you know why? Why? Because God sent us some huts. That also represents an act, a gift. And it is not only the large gifts and the large things that people do for us that we have to be able to see in order to have a qualitative relationship. It is in the 1 column, in the 10 column, and in the 100 column. When a person acts like that, then they live in a life of Aharon HaKohen, not just in a week of Aharon HaKohen. And then they find the ability to always be able to find the Aleph by being able to leave their perspective and find that common space in between the two. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.